Hey guys, this is Rod Pedrick with the Palmetto Golf Shop again, and right now I want to talk about putting clubs back together or re-epoxying clubs. In one of our earlier segments we showed you how we take a shaft out of a club, the tools we use, the heat that we apply, where we apply it. And so right now is we've got this club that we took apart. Remember, this was the TaylorMade Rack OS, happened to be a 6-iron. So now we're going to put that club back together, and so we're just going to show you the tools that we use, the methods, how we clean it up, make sure it's nice and pretty by the time it's done. Okay, so obviously we've got a head that we took apart, and we've got the shaft that we took apart, and the next component of that is going to be the ferrule. Okay, ferrule really serves no purpose; it's more decorative. Without a ferrule, it doesn't look good. With a ferrule, it makes it look nice, clean, and crisp, and that's what we're all about these days, is making sure that club looks perfect when you set it down behind the golf ball. We're going to use some epoxy. This is a fast-setting 10-minute type of epoxy. It's an A and B part. We're going to squirt it out, mix it together. I use some glass shafting beads. It just adds a little bit of grit to the epoxy, so it tends to bind a little bit better as it gets warm and it's heated. And use a screwdriver to mix everything together. Okay, so to start out, we're going to take our two-part epoxy, and we're just going to squirt it out. Okay, and you use enough that you think is the appropriate amount in order to put the club back together. You can tell there's a lighter and a darker portion. Okay, and I just take my screwdriver and I'm going to mix it up really, really good. Okay, can't hurt to overmix. We want to make sure that A and B part is mixed well, because obviously it's got to bind. So go ahead and make sure it's nice and mixed. You can usually tell by the color of the epoxy is just nice and uniform. This particular brand happens to be a nice milky white appearance. Okay. Once you get this stuff mixed up, guys, especially with this quick setting epoxy, you want to kind of work fast, because as it says, it sets really quick. So we want to make sure we start working fast, but you want to do it right at the same time. Shafting beads, I've seen guys use sand. I tend to like the shafting beads. As I said earlier, it just adds a little bit of grit to the epoxy. We'll mix it in there really well. First thing I'm going to do is, after mixing the epoxy, I'm going to take a little bit of the epoxy on my tip of the screwdriver blade, and I'm going to put it down inside the ferrule, inside the hosel. And I'm just going to make sure that's nice and mixed well. Okay, you can tell there's a little bit of epoxy in there. Going to follow that up by taking my shaft. Remember, this is the one that we took apart a little while ago. So I'm going to take a little bit of that residue and just kind of wipe it on the tip of the shaft. Okay. I failed to mention earlier, whenever we reshaft, we always want to abrade the tip of the club. Okay, and abrading kind of takes some of the paint off, takes some of the shiny steel off, and this is what's going to help to bind as it's inside the club. I'm going to take my ferrule and I'm going to slide it over the tip of the shaft, and that's just going to help add some adhesion to the ferrule so it doesn't move. I'm going to go back to my epoxy, reapply the epoxy. There again, I'm going kind of in circular motions around the tip of the shaft. I will even add some to the tip of the shaft. I'm going to take my shaft and the club head that's got epoxy inside the hosel, and I'm going to insert it, and I'm going to twist at the same time, just to make sure everything gets mixed nice and evenly. Be careful, because some of that epoxy is going to drip, as you're seeing, and you want to make sure it's in there nice and tight. Okay. You can usually tell that. And actually, let's clean that up first, just so we don't make a huge mess. Just take you a nice paper towel and wipe that down. Okay. So now we've got a nice club in there. Now, I want to make sure this club is going to be, this shaft is inside the hosel. And the way I always do that is, follow me, camera guy, I'm going to beat it down. Okay? So I want to know that I've got enough shaft inside that hosel. Okay? There again, I'm going to make sure I've got it in there right. Okay? The next thing that we do is, and this is cosmetic, this is a cosmetic issue for me, is I typically turn the label on the shaft on the bottom end of the club. Okay, this is more of an alignment type issue. So this label, I'm going to draw an imaginary line to the bottom of the club. Okay, and that's how I want that club to set when it's in your hand, so that you don't see the label. I'm going to follow that up, so let it set, by using some shaft cleaning solvent. And there again, this is just something where you want to make sure it's nice and clean. I'm just going to wipe it down. Okay? This is just to make it nice and clean. And now, guys, we have a club that has just been reshafted. Nice and clean. It's going to take this epoxy roughly 5 to 10 minutes to set. It's going to be playable today, in case you wanted to play with it. It's going to be playing strength this afternoon, so there's not an issue with that. This club's going to be ready to go by the time you're ready to play golf this afternoon. If you got any questions, just call. We can answer questions as far as the right shaft, the right tip size to make sure we put the right shaft that's supposed to be inside that head, to make sure we get the right length, the right flex, all these factors that are going to help make up the engine of that golf club. The phone number is at the top of the web page, guys. Anytime you need to call, please do. Thanks a lot.